even if I enjoyed building models and training the models, etc., I understood that even if I knew a lot of maths, it didn't make much impact if you were unable to put all of that math, all of that fancy models into production to solve some business use case for your clients. My framework or my philosophy to transition from data science into machine learning engineering was to build a lot of projects. Kept changing jobs, I kept assuming more and more responsibilities, and that's the way that you learn at the end of the day.
Welcome everyone on this new episode of Let's Talk AI. I'm super happy to be here today with Miguel Otero Pedrido. Miguel, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. Excited to be here.
I have many questions, as I like to say. From my understanding, you're a machine learning AI engineer. You're the founder of Neural Maze. You ship AI agents in production. I have a list of things that I want to comment. I want us to share a screen. You have a lot of very cool content on Substack and all other platforms. So maybe you can give it a look to these platforms. But to the people who might not know you, how would you describe yourself in like a few sentences?
Yeah, so I think you've made a very good introduction, to be honest. I would start by the fact that I'm a senior machine learning engineer and AI engineer, and that I work in production-ready environments. That is, I don't live out of my content because I really want to bring content that touches production-ready stuff. I mean, I have like two lives inside one. I have the senior machine learning engineer who works for companies, and then I have the content creation side. About the content creation side, everything is centralized in a hub or an ecosystem called the Neural Maze. And in there, I try to post on LinkedIn on a daily basis, posts about LLM ops, machine learning engineering, AI engineering, etc., and also open source courses. That's basically my main goal, at least this past year. I've been creating a lot of open source courses. We are talking about 5-6 hours hands-on courses that you can follow, both on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and also on my Substack. I try to teach the new era of machine learning engineers and AI engineers the roadmap that they should follow and how to become high-quality engineers that are going to be hired by top companies, basically.
That sounds great. Just to get back in time a little bit, you have a background in physics. I think that a lot of people starting in AI engineering, ML engineering, a few years ago, it was like you have to know classical machine learning methods. You have to understand what does it mean to deploy them, maybe LM flows in like recent platforms such as Databricks. So like there are different types, but working with LLM in production, it's a bit different. And independently of that, I think that a lot of people believe that becoming an AI engineer or an ML engineer require formal training, proper training. To some extent it can, but to other extents, I think that you can learn so much on your own, and you have a physics background. So maybe you can share a bit about your background and your vision on like learning AI engineering and ML engineering these days.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, my background is physics. Since I was a little boy, I was dreaming of studying this career. I mean, I really like everything related to space-time, to gravitation, like relativity, equations, etc. A big fan of Stephen Hawking and all of these authors. And that's the reason why I decided to start physics. I mean, I had an initial doubt between mathematics and physics, but finally I decided to go with physics. When I finished the degree, I mean, I was presenting the master thesis. I realized that I didn't want to spend my life in the research field and I didn't want to become a physics teacher, a professor. So I decided to look for something else outside. And I remember that was around 2017, I think, 16 more or less. Back at that time, there was a huge hype. And nowadays you can see the hype around Gen AI. Well, at that time, all the news were talking about big data and data science, the sexiest job in the 21st century and stuff like that.
Spark.
Yeah, Spark. Yeah, that's it. Hadoop at first, Pig, and all of these frameworks.
Hive.
So Hive. I still like Hive a lot. And I started researching the topic. I started learning about things that I didn't learn throughout my career, like proper programming with Python, Java, also learning Linux, stuff like that. All of this for my own. I mean, I tried to do it like with a self-didactic approach. And then I found a master thesis in Madrid, in the capital of Spain, that was about data science applied to financial markets. So I decided to go there and to see how it goes. And I really enjoyed the master, and I really enjoyed all the expertise that it brought me, because it allowed me to work at BBVA, which is one of the top financial institutions here in Spain. And I was focused on developing recommender systems. So that was really cool, because I had like the two sides of the coin. I had the theoretical background from the master classes, and then I had all the production background, all the production expertise, thanks to the internship. So yeah, that was basically how I started in this field. I mean, I came from physics, but then I realized that many of the knowledge that I had from physics was directly applied into this field. Apart from mathematics, because in physics we have a good mathematical background, also the way that we treat the data, all the statistical knowledge, etc., which seemed to really fit with the data science field.
I was about to ask, how much statistics and math do you put into building agents in production these days?
Yeah, nowadays it's completely different. The thing is that when I started working on companies after I finished the master, I started working for different companies. And that's where I made the change from data scientist into machine learning engineer. Because I realized that even if I enjoyed building models and training the models, etc., at least at that time, there was a huge difference between the data scientist knowledge and the machine learning engineer knowledge. In fact, the machine learning engineering field was not even named back at that time. I understood that even if I knew a lot of maths, it didn't make much impact to the company or to your clients, etc., if you were unable to put all of that math, all of that fancy models into production and to solve some business use case for your clients. And that's the moment when I started focusing a lot on machine learning engineering as a field. I started learning a lot about proper software engineering, all by my own, software engineering, testing, how to deploy things into cloud providers, etc., etc. One thing that I enjoyed about it is that it's very different from studying maths, for example, or physics. In this case, it was really hands-on and applied. So my framework or my philosophy to transition from data science into machine learning engineering was to build a lot of projects. For example, I started learning about Apache Airflow, and I decided to build something with Apache Airflow. I learned Spark, so I built something with Spark. It was a really, really practical mood. And that's how I made the transition. I kept changing jobs. I kept like assuming more and more responsibilities. And that's the way that you learn at the end of the day.
That's awesome, man. I think it's a perfect moment to talk about the neural maze. And then I'd like to maybe dive into some of those projects. I really like the comment that you mentioned, being hands-on is a must to learn. There is no other alternatives. You can scroll LinkedIn all day, or you can read as many articles that you want or courses. But if you're not building things, you're not learning anything. Okay, so I'll just share my screen and go to the Substack. Of course, you have like the YouTube channel and you have LinkedIn and other socials. But I would love to hear a bit more about Neural Maze, how it started, what's your mission, all the courses that you have. Can you tell us a bit about the Neural Maze mission?
Yeah, so when it started, I think like 9 months ago. The mission, the core mission, that's something that I try to impose and to show in all the content that I put forward. The core mission is to help people who were in my position when I tried to enter this field. Because right now, I think it's even harder, not because it's very difficult in a technical sense, but because of the waves of hype and noise that are like isolating all the ecosystem. You see thousands of frameworks, thousands of new LLMs, thousands of libraries, thousands of techniques that are going to kill RAG, that are going to kill LLMs, that are going to kill everything. And at the end of the day, if I put myself in the position of people who are trying to get into this field, how are these poor people going to deal with this overflow of information? And that's exactly what I try to do with the neural maze. Okay, I try to build some oasis or something like that, where we can talk about the stuff that really matters, where we can really talk about AI systems that actually work in real world environments. Because I mean, if you keep scrolling like an endless scroll on LinkedIn, even on Substack, etc., you are going to be handled by FOMO, by the fear of missing out. You're going to click multiple libraries, you're going to explore multiple things, but in a very shallow way. And that's exactly what I want to avoid with the neural maze. I want 3 courses instead of 100, but with these 3 courses, we are going to cover a lot of interesting stuff, and we are going to go deep dive into the technical aspect. because that's the way that you can build a powerful portfolio. And that's the way that you can build something that you will be able to show to future recruiters or even to build your own product. That's basically the core idea.
That's awesome. I love it. Maybe there is one of this article that I'm seeing here that you want to double click on, but my core takeaway here, I can see agentic pattern course, WhatsApp agent course, Filo agents course, YouTube archive about you're teaching a lot of people, you're helping a lot of people. You mentioned yourself that you were always hands-on learning. So before diving into one of them, if you were yourself of a few years ago and you had access to that, how would you approach all that content to learn what you're looking for? Just before that, earlier you mentioned that, okay, you can be extremely good at math, but if you don't know how to channel that talent into something that's useful for the company, then you're just drawing on the walls, I guess, meaning that you can draw very well, but it's not being, from a business perspective, it's not adding value. And so then you mentioned that you channeled all this math knowledge or big data or deploying things and full stack software engineering skills to actually make a great use of those models, putting them in production and giving people access so that they can get and benefits from that. And then we can connect that to like more recent agentic frameworks, and basically those systems needs to be connected to the real world and have observability and metrics so that they are actually being used and people benefits from it. And I think that from a builder perspective, anything that I'm going to learn should make me a better builder with more intention in the work that I do. And that means I need to be creating things that people use and improve them as I learn from seeing how people use those things that I've built. And so here you created, and this is just Substack, but you created so many resources and articles. So if you're yourself from a few years ago, how would you approach all the content that you're looking for? Would you pick a problem and try to search something that's related to your problem and like deep dive into it and build something, which I think is what I would do. But like, how would you approach learning in general? Because you're teaching so many people right now. So how do you approach learning yourself to this day, and how would you approach it back then?
Yeah, so I think you've already mentioned that's also my philosophy. What I typically do is not that I create my open source courses or my projects with a goal in the mind, like, okay, I want to teach this or that. I typically think about something that I would love to be building. For example, Filo agents that is able to allow you to interact with philosophers in a game simulation. For example, I picture this idea in my mind, like, okay, I want to build this. And then I start thinking and researching how to do it. When I have like a clear picture, more or less, of what I want to build, I try to do something very similar to what you were mentioning. I try to build things that are similar to the project that I want to build, do a complete deep dive into all of these resources, understand really well the components that I want to implement, and then start building everything. That's what I would do to really learn technologies, to really learn, for example, how to use MongoDB for short-term memory or long-term memory implementations, how to use Grok LLMs, how to build agentic backends APIs with Fast API. What I do is basically that. Just, okay, these are the components that I need to use, and that's exactly what I'm going to build. What I recommend to people who maybe are not familiar with many of these tools, like OPIS, Fast API, MongoDB, is that they can take any of my courses and they can specialize, they can adapt these courses, these projects to their own use cases. Many people DM me with this, and I see like a lot of mentions saying, hey, Miguel, thank you. I used your Filo agents to create my own simulation for onboarding processes in my company, or I used Ava, the WhatsApp agent, to create an actual like agent that is going to be used for real estate companies. You know, that's what I want my community to do. Take my projects, understand them, go through the course, understand everything, invest a lot of time, because these projects are not easy in the sense that they are not based on clicking the next button. They demand you attention and they demand a lot of work. But I can assure you that if you finish these open source courses and you use the code, you're going to be able to build amazing applications in a couple of months. That's the way I always loved learning. And that's what I try to teach to my community. To learn by building, basically.
I love it. I have two follow-up thoughts on that. The first one is you mentioned about reusing your code. You just released Cookie Clicker. Is that correct?
The cookie cutter, yeah.
Cookie
The cookie
cutter,
cutter
my bad.
for agentic projects. Yeah.
We can review that in a second, but overall, I really like the idea of just building a big repo of things and people learning through it and reuse them. From an engineer mindset, sometimes we like to overcomplicate things or like look at a system and appreciate the system, but not the output of the system. And so sometimes we'll be super proud about something that we've built, but the actual values that that thing generate is like very low. And so what I mean about that is because with Gen AI and all these AI coding solutions that can work with you, generating features almost becomes a commodity that is cheaper and cheaper without removing the value of architect, like designing great systems that work in production. I really like Andrew NG on this. He have a post on the batch letters that they do at deeplearning.ai. And basically it's about product management, meaning that in a world where in the snap of a finger, you have a feature, what do you build? And so it all comes down to that. What are you actually building and why? And which direction is this going to move forward? And like, how do you know? So I think I'm mentioning that for two reasons. The first one is because I think that having code and features as a commodity, you can move way faster. And so you can actually build value way faster. So this is like fun to think about and act on it. Two, not getting stuck into like the actual systems, but building things that has value. And three, the production aspect. So before getting to the cookie cutter and other things that I want to comment, can you talk about creating value and having these kind of systems in production, maybe observability, these kind of things? I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. All the LLMs and the coding assistants, etc. The value of the code that we provide, the value has shifted. I mean, it's not the same as 3 years ago, for example. But what I think is that people need to stop thinking about code or about software as like specific applications, but as systems. Like, for example, when you are talking about LLMs or you're talking about an agentic application or even an ML model, like a recommender system, I think many people is still forgetting that that piece of software, the agent, the LLM, the recommender system, represents 1% of the whole system. You might have an amazing agent that is responding like with 100% accuracy, with 1,000 chains of reasoning and solving, I don't know, some Hilbert problems. But at the same time, if you are unable to embed this agent into a system that is deployable, that is usable for many users, you are doing nothing. I mean, if you keep inside your Jupyter notebook or inside your local machine, you are basically doing nothing in terms of creating value or creating a product or creating something that solves actual use cases, actual like business problems. So that's one thing for me, the thing that people need to think about systems. And that's what I put a lot of effort into, making all of these diagrams, into all of these interconnected diagrams with many components working together, etc. That's exactly the reason behind, because I want like the community, my followers, etc., to understand that it's becoming more and more necessary to be able to think in terms of systems. I mean, it's always been like that, but now with the ease of generating code, it's going to become one of the top skills in the future. At least that's my opinion. And about deploying to production, I think this is something that it's also changing a lot, because if you see the requirements for data scientists, like canonical data scientists, 5 years ago, they didn't require Docker Compose, Kubernetes, Airflow, dbt, etc. Right now, if you start looking at the offers for data scientists, they resemble more like a traditional machine learning engineer. And I think that's where people need to start working hard in that sense. Because right now, it's not enough for you to know how to train linear regression or a random forest or even a neural network using PyTorch. Now it's also necessary to have the knowledge to deploy all of this to production, to build ML pipelines with frameworks like Qflow, ZenML, Kedro, whatever, able to implement all the ML ops, LLM ops, experiment tracking, model registries. All of this is vital for production, and all of this is progressively be part of the data scientist skill set. So people should be investing time into this. And that's also what I try to teach with the neural maze. Like, okay, you need to add a lot of skill sets right now into your belt.
I love that. Yeah, I think that This is a fundamental principle that I would recommend to anyone building. You're not just a data engineer, or you're not just a backend engineer, or you're not just a front-end engineer. I think that approaching each problem as what do I need to achieve that goal, and what do I need to learn to do that, and then doing it. And then every time I do this loop, I minimize the time it takes me to just build a thing that actually has the reward that I want. Planning too much ahead isn't doing any good either. You want to narrow down the product into simple pieces and like make sure that you're going in the right direction and like that it's even worth it to build it in the first place. But yeah, I think that is general advice of be curious and don't be scared about attacking new technologies, because in the end you have these amazing tutors that are here to like help you, like I don't know, Anthropic, Gemini, ChatGPT, Cursor, Cloud Code. You just basically are working in an era of technology where you start with a personal teacher 24/7 to help you understand anything. So I'm a bit upset when I read posts, people criticizing Cursor or Cloud Code because they did an action that I didn't want to. It's like if I'm cutting a tree and I hurt myself with the axe and I'm like, oh, I hate that axe. So bad. But in reality, I just misused it and I got harmed instead of cutting the tree. And so there is a learning curve in leveraging those tools. Some great engineers need to invest the time to understand how these tools can complement their workflows. But overall, I would really emphasize the fact that not being scared about going out of that role that I'm attached to, especially if you're a data scientist, then run, like learn AI engineering skills, learn software engineering skills, learn backend, learn frontend, learn framework and agents and all of that. What would you say to that? Do you agree? Would you add some nuances?
Yeah, I have like one thing that I would like to mention is that, for example, yesterday I saw a post from a very big content creator on LinkedIn. I'm not going to say his name, but one thing that I noticed was that, I mean, the typical hype hook for LinkedIn, data science is dead, right? RIP data scientist, it's dead. It's a dead, whatever. So
like you mentioned earlier, there is a lot of dead thing on LinkedIn
there
these
are a
days.
lot of corpses around the place, and many of them are not actually dead. So yeah, we need to be aware of that. He was mentioning, yeah, like the end of data scientists, that it was like already dead, that all data scientists need to change. I could learn, for example, with prompting engineering. In my opinion, a bunch of nonsense. The thing is that sometimes I have the feeling that people label data scientists as people who are not data scientists, at least for me. But maybe this is my like biased opinion. I've worked with people who had the label data scientist, and I didn't consider data scientists. And I worked with people who had the label of data scientists, and for me, they were truly data scientists. And for me, that's the key difference. Actual data scientists for me are people who understand at a very deep level the models that they're implementing, the statistical prerequisites, all the assumptions that you're making with your models, are able to understand and to talk in the statistical language. That for me is a data scientist. And that's something that I think right now, at least, LLMs are not able to match, at least with the top data scientists that I've worked in the past. Then we have these junior data scientists, for example, let's call it that way, who are just proficient at importing scikit-learn or PyTorch or doing some simple tasks with a lot of abstractions. In that case, yes, probably that's going to be replaced with AutoML or whatever. But there are data scientists who are building these AutoML models, who are building all of these packages, who know how to implement all of these advanced systems. And I think those are not going away, to be honest.
Maybe where they're valued is changing though. Because like, yeah, to the point of the argument, yeah, replace scikit-learn with LLMs. Right. Try to do predictive pricing with an LLM. You're going to have fun.
That's the thing.
Except if like in your prompt, you're so specific that you do kind of a classification with like parameters and then, but that's overkill, and like you can train a model that is efficient, that is like just a simple regression, but because of the volume of data that you have, you can put that in production and it's actually very useful. And like no LLM is going to change that. I would also say that the bar to entry of a data scientist to add value has been lowered, because you can be guided with any LLM to like build your own model and like learn how to train it. it requires some curiosity and some investigation and understanding what the model is telling you and know when it's bullshitting you or not. But overall, I think that those systems to like train my own regression model with a specific Python library, we could have agents doing that on their own. I like your point. Data scientists are people who are very expert in statistics, models. I think that as a data scientist, today I would even pivot towards research and like be really into like the state of the art research. Jan LeCun is doing a huge campaign about do not investigate LLM frameworks, basically. This is not where like the future of AI is. But yeah, I love that point. Do you want to add anything on that, or should I move to the next topic?
No, I think, yeah, all the clarifications are being made. So yeah, I agree with your last statement. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, going back. So I want to talk about Filo agents, but I want to talk about that cookie cutter. Do you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Awesome. So if you're live checking that with us, go on the Substack, give it a like, check the video, check the YouTube. You will have the time of your life. This is not sponsored at all. I just think that Miguel is doing such an amazing job. So check it out, my friend. Okay, can you tell us about that? What I really like about this is that it reflects the way you think and approach these kind of things, like setting up agents, configurations. You have like a system thinking more than like just building a backend or something. So yeah, could you tell us first of all what is a cookie cutter for those who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that I deployed yesterday, and a cookie cutter is like a project template that you can use to not start from scratch your projects, to start with a lot of boilerplate code and a structure that is going to help a future project so that it's maintainable, is easily understood by any other programmer, and basically that respects many of the good practices in software engineering. And in here you can see the example structure that I'm going to generate. It's just a simple command. You just need to run cookie cutter and the URL of the GitHub repo. It will ask a couple of questions like your name, the name of the project that you want to generate, the name of the package, etc. And it will generate something like this with very specific documents and files, like a makefile, Docker file, Docker Compose, READMEs, UV, by project tomls, etc., etc. And the most important part is exactly what you are showing right now, is that everything is structured. All the Python package or the Python library that you're going to build is going to be structured following the clean architecture. That is, we are going to structure our agent projects as traditional software, because at the end of the day, an agent is nothing more than a new piece of software. But in 10 years, probably, it will become something as usual as a connector to MongoDB. So in here, I'm dividing your project structure into three main classes or layers: the domain layer, the application layer, and the infrastructure layer. In the domain layer, I just put a lot of placeholders for you to add their domain classes, entities, etc. In the application layer, I put a lot of placeholders to give you ideas of the kind of things that you can implement in there, like a conversational use case, a RAG use case, a fine-tuning use case, whatever. And finally, the infrastructure. That's the place where all the plumbing goes, all the connections to actual databases, all the connections to LLM providers, all the connections to MCP clients, also the actual API. In this case, I just create some very simplistic fast API to give you an idea with the cookie cutter, but you can add here whatever you want. The key idea in here is to respect the clean architecture paradigm, in the sense that domain is going to be framework agnostic, services are going to be one layer on top, and finally you have the infrastructure. So that if I want to replace Quadrant, for example, with Weaviate, it's going to be seamless. If I replace OpenAI with Claude, it's going to be seamless. And same goes with all the infrastructure connectors that you have. That's basically the idea of this cookie cutter.
Let's go right away to the Filo agent. So let me go back to that screen sharing that I had on that specific repo, and then maybe you can guide us through like how did this project got created. One of the things that I think can be very interesting to a lot of people, and myself included, is like, how do you come up with all of that? Is it like you tinkering on ideas and projects, and then you're like, oh, I like that? How do you come up with your writing ideas, documenting your journey, your learnings? Is it the same mentality as mentioned earlier? Like, hey, I want to learn Spark, so I'm going to build a project. Is it similar? Or like, how does that?
Yeah. It's basically that. I mean, I want to learn something, so I start working hard until I reached the goal. In this case, I really like video games. It's very simple, the explanation, as you will see. I really like video games, I really like philosophy, and I really like AI. So I thought, okay, is there a possible match between these three? And I thought, okay, it would be amazing to use some agents inside a video game that talk about philosophy. And then I contacted Paul Justin. We started talking. He liked the idea, and we decided to go with it because this is a collaboration with Paul Justin from Decoding ML, and we both decided to implement this, basically. For me, it was possibly my favorite project so far because it feels really personal in the sense that I've been thinking about this idea for almost 1 year. And when I finally made it public, it was like really, really special for me. And a lot of people here in Spain are showing interest in this idea to be implemented in high schools, universities. So yeah, it's something that I'm also considering to make like a mature product in the future because many people are interested.
That's awesome. And so, okay, so you merged them. Can you tell us more a bit about the project? So here you have an architecture. You mentioned before agnostic. What are some cool insights or lessons learned or like people that are sometimes mistaken that you've heard that you could share with us, like taking Filo agent as an example, or really anything that you find interesting about that project, which I know there's a lot of things.
Yeah, if you want, I can share my screen and I can show you like the complete diagram.
Let's go.
There's a video that I think showcases really well what the project is about.
Okay. Leibniz, Descartes, Ada Lovelace, Turing,
John Searle, and you can also find an Easter egg because you will see Paul, Justin, and myself inside the video game. We thought it was funny to do that. This is basically what you will find. You can move around a Pokemon-like village and start discussing philosophical problems. All of the philosophical questions are going to be related to consciousness, AI, etc., to trigger a little bit your imagination. You will have the choice to talk to whoever you want inside the simulation. And about the architecture, about the things that we wanted to teach, apart from philosophy, the things that we wanted to teach with this project is that it is possible to connect video games with agents with the right system or the right structure. And we also wanted to teach how it is possible to connect video games with agentic backends, not using the regular HTTP protocol, but WebSockets, because this is something that we never saw until this point. We were researching, we were looking at a lot of different projects. I've made a lot of projects. Paul has made a lot of projects as well, but we never had the chance to use this WebSocket communication. So first of all, we wanted to showcase how easy it is in FastAPI to create these WebSocket endpoints. It could be a video game, but it could be a messaging app, it could be whatever you want. But we wanted to show, first of all, how is it possible to use WebSocket channels to connect agentic backends with front-end UIs. And apart from that, also how complex and production-ready backend can be done, can be implemented. Here you can see that we are defining with LangGraph the workflows, the tooling, etc. that we need. It's also connected to a short-term memory and a long-term memory, in this case using MongoDB, but you could replace it with whatever databases you think fit. Also how to do actual ingestion of documents, implementing a lot of different optimization techniques and a lot of tricks. And finally, using LLM provider different than OpenAI, which is also cool. And finally, this is a very important part, explain how to implement an observability layer that you can export, that you can copy and apply to your own projects. Basically, we were doing prompt versioning, tracing, evaluation of the rack system, and all of them with Opic. That's basically what we were trying to showcase with this project.
Yeah, so follow-up questions on this because I think it's very interesting. First of all, I think that if you just use that repo and build something cool with it on top of it, you're just so much ahead of like everyone in the technology space because like to any interviewer, when you're able to build these end-to-end systems and like explain the trade-offs and the technical challenges that you care about, deployments, CI/CD, observability, and backend and frontend, you're so ahead, in my opinion, from a lot of people, especially when you can get deep into like, what does it mean to have 1,000 users with WebSockets, with like vector store and like the threading that can happen, or like if you want to have things isolated as a user level. So what are some cool technical details that you think are overlooked? I hear about it, but not as much as other topics. Observability. Opic is one Would you use Opic right now for any projects? Do you have other providers, and what can you share on observability? So that's one. And second, I would be curious to hear about the actual video game. Who designed it? And like, how does it work? So yeah, it's a lot of questions. In summary, it's like observability, backend, WebSocket, threading, and front. Pick whatever you enjoy the most.
So about observability, we are using Opic, but there are, of course, many cool tools out there as well. LangFuse, for example, is a good option. And if you are really committed to LangGraph, to the LangChain ecosystem, Langsmith is also a good choice. The thing about Opic that I really enjoy is that Opic is part of the Comet ML ecosystem. For me, the advantage of this ecosystem is that you have ways to monitor both traditional ML pipelines, traditional ML systems, and also actual LM systems and agentic systems, etc. They are trying to create a very omnipresent observability layer. And that's the reason why I really like Opic. For example, for my latest course, it's about video agents. We also chose Opic, and 99.9% for my future course, I'm also going to use Opic. But you can also, as I was saying, use LangFuse or whatever tool. Just make sure that it provides tracing. All of them provide that. Prompt versioning, that it provides also evaluation metrics out of the box, prompt optimization algorithms. Now, about your second question. So you were asking about the WebSocket connection, right?
Yeah, does it has like threading, or like what was the interesting pieces when you implemented? Which framework did you use? Do you use LongChain, or what did you use for the framework, agentic framework?
So for Filo agents, we chose LangGraph for all of this. And the only thing that you need to do in terms of WebSocket is to define like the client in the game simulation and the server in the agentic backend. That doesn't care that much because you are opening like a bidirectional channel between the client and the server, so they can both send data and receive data back. Okay, so about how we implemented it, let me share the screen again because I have an article about it in detail. So you can see here how easy it is in Fast API to define a WebSocket endpoint. You just need to define this app WebSocket and inside WS chat, and this automatically converts this endpoint into a WebSocket endpoint. And inside, what you will see is that, there are a lot of helper functions, but this get streaming response is going to call in a streaming mode and a sync call to the LangGraph workflow. So we are sending a streaming of strings, a streaming of data. That is basically the question that I'm asking to the philosopher. It's going to be sent throughout the WebSocket channel, and it's going to be sent here to this get streaming response. Then the LangGraph workflow is going to process this streaming of data, and is going to generate a response in a streaming as well. And we are going to send the response back with this async for chunk in response stream. We are sending chunks back to the video game. And in there are a few collectors, a few classes that are going to take this streaming of data, and they're going to display them in the beautiful dialog boxes. Okay, so that's what is happening. This is exactly what is happening. We're sending chunks, and we are generating a response.
And then on the front end, you kind of like aggregate the events, and you're like checking for events to know like when the stream ended, or like if you have a full response, these kind of things.
That's it.
That could be interesting to explore or play around with. The first one is like threading messaging. So meaning like, let's say you have a logged person and you want each situation to be unique, then maybe you need to have like threads in the WebSocket and at the application level so that you can segment depending on the user, like different words, and like have them stored in memory or in the vector store or in the database in different ways. Another thing that I'm thinking about is like, because we have a login, so having like a security layer on top of it. So maybe like the WebSocket connection, like generate a token and do like checks of tokens to make sure that the WebSocket is secure and that the person is logged in, and maybe managing some cookies. So like fun things to play with here. Those are just two ideas on top of my head. What would you do to Filo agent, like with that repo, to have fun? Like what would be your next vision of Filo agent? You mentioned earlier productivizing it.
So my next vision, like the next version of Filo agents, would be, well, first of all, to improve the front end, because I designed a video game, all the things that you're seeing here. It was my first video game, so I'm not proficient at this. It was with a framework called Phaser.js. It's JavaScript, and it generates like the browser game out of the...
So how did you, because we didn't have Nano Banana at that time, so how did you create all the characters and visuals and everything? Is it like generated?
That was really crazy. It's not AI generated. There's an LPC, like deterministic generator. And what I did was to take all the pieces in that LPC generator and try to combine them so they resemble more or less the actual philosophers. Because I tried with many LLMs, like vision LLMs and image generations, etc. And the result was really, really bad. I mean, really poor, because you couldn't really make the transition, like the different states of the NPC. It was really bad when it was generated. So I decided to do it manually. But yeah, in the future, the NPCs had to be better, and all the overall video game needs to be better, at least in my opinion. That's basically how they were created. I mean, I spent a few evenings trying to put all the pieces together.
Would you do another video game sometimes?
I would love to, but I need to, I mean, the thing is that I believe I bring knowledge in the AI side. So in this case, even if I had a lot of fun creating this simulation and creating the video game with Phaser, I think that's not my goal, to be honest. So for the next video game, I would like something with maybe Unity, with Godot. I'm even thinking of something with Minecraft, with Minetest or Luanti or things like that, to create actual agents, but local agents with reasoning LLMs and running locally everything. But in that case, my idea is to invest as minimal time as possible in the video game design, because that's not my role. I'm just a newbie.
And with Nano Banana, you can do crazy things. So we've mentioned a lot of things, and that's so kind of you to like take the time to share with us specific pieces of your work with Neural Maze and all the things that you've been working on. So I have a hype question, which is, what is Miguel using these days? Are you using Cloud Code, Cursor? What are you reading? Any interesting read or papers, people to follow? Where is your attention at? Because we're learning from you. Who do you learn from? And like, what kind of tech stack do you use on a daily basis? These kind of things. I think that a lot of people would be interested in that, including myself.
Yeah, so in terms of the tooling that I use for coding, I use Cursor. The only thing for me about Cursor is that I kind of hate the agent functionality that they added. So I'm thinking of going back to VS Code and implementing my own connector with Cloud Code or stuff like that, because I don't like the overall behavior of Cursor agent, to be honest. It generates sometimes like don't feel really reasonable for me. So I don't know. I mean, I really like Cursor, and I mean, it speeds up my work by a lot, but maybe I consider other options. And in terms of the articles I'm reading or the profiles I'm following, so to be honest, I follow basically the same people since I started this content creation journey. I mean, for me, one of the biggest inspirations is Paul Justin with the Coding ML. I've always said that. Also, Paula Barta from Real ML. Paula Barta, he's also Spanish. He was my first inspiration. I mean, if I started creating content for LinkedIn, for Substack, etc., it was thanks to Paula Barta, because I really, really love his content. But also Paul Justin, he's doing a crazy, crazy, crazy work with the Coding ML. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes we think he's some kind of vampire and that he doesn't sleep or something, because it's just crazy, the amount of work that he puts together.
He's like number one. He's like in the top 1% of Python AI engineer on GitHub.
Yeah, I mean, he's crazy. I mean, it's crazy good engineer. Also, Alex Rathband, we've been doing an open source course together this month, and we are releasing the YouTube video, the long YouTube video, probably next week. And he's also a top engineer. He has more in-depth content than myself. So if you want to really, really get into the bare metal, Alex Rathband is your guy. He's amazing, and the Substack articles that he creates are like work of art, to be honest. And yeah, I would say that those are basically the ones that I follow the most nowadays. There are also some new builders who I really, really like, people who are getting into this field and who are putting very good content. This is, to be honest, really, really cool on LinkedIn, because right now when you see LinkedIn, sometimes it feels like agents talking to agents, and that's discouraging. For me, it's really refreshing when I see these new content creators putting things that actually matter in front of the community.
100%. I love that. This is Alex Razvent Substack, and he also has his account, but we can see some of his posts. Of course, you definitely need to check out Paul Husting and all the other cool people that you mentioned. That's amazing, man. I just have one more question, really. Where can people see more of you? So you have Substack, you're on LinkedIn, you're on X, or are you? Are you on X?
I barely use X, to be honest. I'm more active on YouTube, yeah. On the Neural Maze, it's called the channel. I really like creating videos.
I want to see you on X, man. I think that there is a big tech community on X that is not on any other socials. For example, Latent Space, which is not a secret, it's like my favorite source of AI engineering, I guess, with Wix and Alexio. And so they just post their entire video on X. Okay, get on X because I think that more people will benefit from you, but that's up to you. So YouTube, Substack, LinkedIn, where else can we find you?
My idea for this year, probably end 2025 or beginning of 2026, is to start a community in school. School is a place where many people are creating communities. For me, it's ideal because, for example, on Substack, you can build a very good community, but it's more focused on read and post and not self-contained courses in that sense. A school is for self-contained courses, for evergreen courses. And that's, I think, the next reasonable move for the Neural Maze ecosystem, to have also this premium community on school, where you will be able to access Q&As with me, mentorships, and of course, a lot of courses with much more detail than the ones that I put on YouTube or on Substack. So that's probably the next step.
That's amazing, man. So I just want to give you a big thank you. I know you're very busy for coming on the show and sharing all of these cool things. Do you have any last words for the Let's Talk AI community? It can be anything, really.
Just simply build and stay out of the hype and build a lot of crazy things, because that's the only way to learn.
Thank you very much, Miguel, and see you on the next episode.